lot of kids that are recommended from Osborne. Um, so so we have one place where we meet, which is actually at the Quaker organization, American Foreign Service Committee, which is right there in Union Square, a couple blocks away from Union Square. And that's usually where we meet. Before this whole COVID-19 thing started, we were meeting in that building 3 times a week. Mondays, Wednesdays. I mean, no. Yes, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays were the days that they were meeting.
And what happened now that you can't do that? Are you able to stay connected to some of these kids?
Well, it's been a lot harder, a lot more challenging, but technology is great. So they've been doing a lot of like Zoom classes and stuff like that.
Right. Good old Zoom. All right. Well, now you and Caron share the love of film and documentary, that genre. You were also part of a film project. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. No. So they take the film crew Echoes takes pride in making films that have to focus with those topics. So everybody goes through film training. Everybody learns how to get familiar with the cameras and the angles and how to take shots, both in pictures as well as actual film. They have a couple. I mean, they have a lot. The first film, though, Echoes of Incarceration, the original one, came out in 2008, and I was about 15 or 16 when that one came out. And the thing that was very different was, again, the journalists of the film were primarily us, the kids. We were telling it from our point of view, but instead of just like somebody from the outside looking in and saying, okay, so like this is what it's like. No, we were actually the ones to say, well, this is what I go through on a daily basis. This is what I've seen. This is what I've been exposed to. This is what my mother, my father, my X, Y, and Z goes through. And we also did person-in-person interviews where we went and did interviews with experts on the topic. We did interviews with lawmakers, correctional officers, lawyers, judges, and we used the information that we gathered from these experts and included it in the film of how that trauma affects a kid. And through that documentary, we opened doors to many more other documentaries, to where we started to learn how science plays a huge role in how can I say, like how science plays a huge role as into somebody becoming stuck in the system, and how there's many things that we don't actually know. For example, there, here in America, there's a thing called the school to prison pipeline, which is depending, like they run school the way that they run a prison. And if you really look at the way that they do everything, it's kind of subconsciously training your mind to learn how to obey. If you're ever put in a situation to where you end up behind bars, you become like a model inmate. So I kind of lost my train of thought. But
well, I wanted to pick up on what you're saying, because it's very, very important, the point you made, the school to prison pipeline. This is something that has always interested me as someone who taught kids who couldn't read all my life. And when you can't read and you are a 6th grader or a 7th grader, what's going to happen to you? We know, right, the answer, because we also know that there is a very high rate of illiteracy in juvenile detention. And then, of course, that moves to adult prisons. Yeah. And most of the people who are struggling with literacy are boys or men. So, what I saw when I taught is I had quite a few class clowns because, if you can't do the work, then you don't want anyone to know that, and so you start to misbehave, and that way you're off the hook. So I often think, Stephen, about some of those boys that I taught way back in the 1970s and 80s and 90s when I was still in the classroom. And I wonder what happened to them. And it would not surprise me to find out that many of them ended up behind bars. So, what you're saying about the school to prison pipeline is that I have read a great deal about it, that when a child misbehaves, sometimes the school system is very tough on them, and they might put them in a juvenile detention program, and that starts the pipeline going. So I'm very, very glad you brought that up, because it's very distressing to me to know that that exists, and indeed it does. And you also made a reference to when we spoke before the interview about brain development in teens. Yes. We don't have a great deal of time left, but can you tell us just a little bit about that? And what does that have to do with what we're talking about?
Okay, so we just recently finished the documentary where it was a 3-part documentary, and we were working hand in hand with Frick University. And the way that was it? Yes, no. And I believe it was NYU. But the documentary was working on the brain science behind most of these incarcerations of young people, and how they noticed that here in the United States, they tend to try first convictors, especially when they're young. They tend to try them with no mercy and just try them as an adult. And a lot of these kids, you'll go to prisons and see that there's these kids that did crimes of just being at the wrong place in the wrong time, or just through association, serving life sentences or sentences. They came in when they were 13 and they're 40 or going on 50, and they're still serving a sentence for something that nowadays we would consider to be idiotic as a reason to just waste a life away like that. And when you interview these people that are in jail and you ask them the way they thought when they were at that age compared to how they think now, not a good 99.99% of the time, you're going to see that their mentality is not the same. So that being the case, they decided to do an experiment, and they noticed that there's something called the emerging adult, which is between the ages of I believe 13 to like about 20. I don't remember the numbers by heart, but I believe it's like from once you start becoming a teenager, which would be 13, till about the age of 21, 22, where your brain is still growing.
It's 25. It's age 25, because I've read the studies. Yeah, right. And that's when your brain is finished maturing, but not until then. So, what does that say? We kind of think, well, if you're 18, you're considered an adult. You may be considered an adult in the eyes of the law, but that doesn't mean you're mature. So exactly. I wanted you to raise that too, because that's very important. So you really have become very deeply connected to this wonderful group. What's up ahead for yourself? What do you see as your goal? We only have a couple minutes left.
As to my goal, I've always been a person that when I've been involved with the group, I've always enjoyed being in front of the camera rather than behind it. I feel like I was blessed with a voice that is loud, and I believe I have a big mouth. So I like to just talk about the topics that really are close to me. I feel like I have a lot of experience in this, especially because I've been involved with the group and just try to be involved as much as I can. So for me, at least, I know that wherever I have the opportunity to go and share my story to where it will affect somebody, and that's the biggest thing for me. I feel like my story has been able to help a lot of kids that have been going through the same or similar. My voice has been able to help a lot of kids, because I was going through, I was about to become stuck in the system myself had I not learned of a better way to get that anger and just hurt out. So I feel, so for me personally, I don't know where the future might take me, but I know that it will always be wherever I can share my voice. That's where I will be.
That's great. And something you said, I think, has to be underscored. And you said you felt very, very much alone, that, no one else had been through what you were going through. And now you can say to kids, no, you're not alone. I went through it, and you also, your friend Caron went through it as well. And I think when kids see they're not alone, it makes a big, big difference in their life.
Yeah.
So you're doing some great work. Both of you are doing some great work. And I'm very, very honored to have met you and had you on the program, and keep doing the good things that you're doing. I hope you stay with it. I really do. Well, thank you very much, Stephen, for your time today. And I want to remind people that if you have comments or questions, please write to me at pursuingjustice5@gmail.com. And we'll see you next time for more interviews of young people impacted by the prison system. Thank you again, Stephen.
Thank you so much.